Austin. How we doing, buddy?
Good, Dad. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for our guest. I think it's going to be a real blessing to our listeners. But today our journey takes us to Tulsa, Oklahoma, home of the Union Redhawks. And we take a look inside the heart and mind of a 6-time state champion, QB whisperer, 4-time author, offensive innovator, and creator of the R4 system. This is a story of one coach's passion to use the game of football to build great men on and off the field. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host, and alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher. Today, we'd like to welcome Dub Maddox as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Dub.
Hey, appreciate you guys having me on. I've been following your podcast, and you've had some heavy hitters here, so I'm going to try to do my best, but I've really enjoyed what you guys are doing.
Well, the thing that we've learned, Dub, is everybody's story carries a heavy weight. I love the words you use. And, like you said, sometimes in our society, we put different measurements on different people's careers. But when you get to it and you get into the heart of a person, that story is special. So we're just excited to have you share yours with us and the time you're taking. So while we get started here, give me one word, Dub, that would describe your childhood in the Maddox house.
Magical is the first thing I think. I'm so blessed to have been surrounded by family. I've had 2 great parents that are still together, been married for over 50 years, and on each side of my parents' family, just big families. I have a lot of cousins, and family is key in our household growing up. So I was surrounded with a lot of love. Got a younger brother, very close to, and my mom raised us in church, and we were there. I mean, it was Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday nights, and we did not miss. And I tell you, I just really appreciate her for, instilling that in me, and just, seeing her faith, being shared out and through her, her family. And so again, I was just really blessed as a young child to have that love and support all the way through my childhood and even today.
I love the word you chose when you said magical. So elaborate on that a little bit. Why did you say magical?
It's just, I always knew that I had unconditional love from both parents. And as you get older and you have your own kids, you start to realize when you have parents that pour into you, and no matter what you do, they're going to love you and they support you. It gives you a good frame of reference of just what God's love is like. And so as you start to grow and find your relationship with God, you have a good frame of reference that, well, if my parents love me this much and have done all this for me and sacrificed this for me, how much more, does God love me and will he do for me? And so it just gave me a good frame of reference to really understand just the magnitude of God's love for me through their love.
Now, what did mom and dad do?
They were educators. My dad was a principal and retired, several years ago. Mom was a kindergarten teacher. So we're an educational background family, and they tried to talk me out of it because they wanted me to make money. But I kind of fall in their footsteps. My dad was a coach starting out of college. He played college basketball and then went to the Navy and played there. And they met in Florida there in the Naval Academy. And so we just grew up as educators. They moved to Oklahoma after I was born, and I was raised in Oklahoma.
Now, you said you have one sibling?
Yeah, I have a younger brother, and he works for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's been with the organization since they started there in Oklahoma City.
What does he do?
Yeah, he's the head of ticket sales and events there that they put on for different games. And so he's worked his way up pretty high in the organization. It's a really good organization, got good ownership, and so he's done really well there.
What's one of your favorite memories with your brother?
Probably just, picking on him. Giving him a hard time all the time. He's 5 years younger than me. So, we were really not close in terms of age. And so there was just a lot of playing vacations, but really, out in the backyard, playing football and tackling, making them cry, things like that. But but no, he's a great brother, and just, I mean, a great dad and husband, and someone I really look up to, even though he's my younger brother.
Isn't that a typical brother story? I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us, growing up with your dad being an educator, do you have a memorable conversation or a memorable moment that you remember from, your relationship with your dad growing up?
Yeah, probably with my father growing up, he was a principal, and so I had to actually go through the school where he was a principal. So it was almost like, um, think about this on the playground. He's dealing with all the discipline problem kids,
Yeah.
and so it was almost like you're in prison and the warden is your father. And so all the kids that got in trouble, I was like the public enemy, right? I was the
Oh, yeah.
principal's son. And so it's kind of interesting. It was like, a lot of those kids that had discipline problems really didn't like me too much, but it was interesting. I really grew up, and my dad was a disciplinarian, and I kind of had a reverent fear of him, because, I mean, he laid down the law.
Yeah.
And so our relationship was more of just like kind of Old Testament, where it's like you see God as this disciplinarian and always, disciplining the Israelites and things like that. And then as you get older, it turns into more like New Testament, where my dad and I are so close. And I mean, he's at every game. I mean, we talk all the time. And so our relationship really shifted as I got out of high school, or into high school and beyond, where it's more of that best friend, and just we're really close. But my dad just had a huge impact on me just playing sports, and he was very supportive. I absolutely loved coming home after games and sitting in the kitchen and just rehashing games and talking to him. And it was like oxygen to my soul, just being just mentored by my father, and just I mean, he wasn't hard on me. He always gave me good advice. He always supported the coach. But I think, those conversations are the things that I really enjoyed as playing sports, and even coaching today. I mean, we always talk about the games and rehash everything. And those are special moments. And I think those are the conversations and the things. I mean, there's just so many of those, but that's what I enjoy most with my relationship with my dad, is that mentorship that I got, and that support, and just having that relationship through sports.
The real question, Dub, is though, does he give you play calling advice?
Absolutely. And he doesn't pull any punches. If I called a bad game, I'm going to hear about it. I mean, it's like, what were you thinking on that 3rd and 10 call? Or if I called a good game, I mean, there's been, hey, that's the best game you've ever called. I mean, I'm going to get the truth with him. I mean, he's not going to sugarcoat it. So I always look, even to this day, I mean, I always look forward and feel good about myself when I get a compliment from my father. It's amazing how that never goes away.
That's awesome. Tell us maybe some of your dreams or heroes growing up, maybe besides your father.
Yeah, my heroes. I mean, John Elway was my idol growing up, and it's funny how, Ken, I met you, and I find out you played and backed him up and played for the Broncos. I was a diehard Broncos fan growing up, and I'm telling you, when I played quarterback, I had number 7, and I had posters all over my room, and it was, I mean, John Elway was my guy, and that was one of my big heroes growing up, in terms of just like looking at NFL guys and trying to emulate those. But my coaches had a big impact on me, growing up, and there's a lot of coaches that poured into me, and so those were probably my biggest heroes as a child.
Okay.
Dub, when you look back to your home, what role did faith play in your home at the early age? You talked about going to church on Sunday morning and night, but can you think of any specific thing about faith that you learned as a young boy in the home?
Yeah. Ironically, our neighbors was my preacher. So the preacher of our church growing up lived right next door to me, and he had 2 older siblings, and one was 8 years older than me, and he was an athlete, and he ended up being our youth minister when I got into high school. But that family had a big impact on my faith. And so, I mean, I'd always go over there. I was like an adopted son for them. I'd always go over their house, just walk in the back door. They had a pool. We would swim over there, and really looked up to their family. But that had a big impact on me. I was really surrounded by a lot of good people in our church. And then obviously with our neighbors being the preacher and their family, of just seeing people live out their faith and, just the love that they had for each other and how they served each other. I think that was probably had the biggest impact me outside just my own personal, home. I mean, my mom will give the shirt off her back if she needs to. I mean, she would always make like big desserts. And I'm coming in the kitchen. I'm thinking, wow, man, thanks, Mom, for making a cake. And she's like, oh, this is for the Johnsons down the road or the Smiths. And like, she never made us anything for us. It was anytime there was like cookies or anything, it was for somebody else. And I despised that at the time, but now I appreciate, all that she did for other people. So.
Well, heck, you lived with a principal and your neighbor was a preacher. That's pretty good there.
Yeah, I was walking the straight and narrow from a young age. I didn't have much leeway to get off the beaten path.
So tell us a little bit about your high school experience, maybe the sports you played and, maybe some of your favorite sports memories. And then tell us also maybe where you went to college. Yeah.
So, it kind of starts back, I think about this all the time. What the first memory you had as a child. And I remember this memory is seared in my. I think the earliest memory that I have as a child, my dad took me to our hometown football game. I was 5 years old, and I remember being in the stands and games get ready to start, lights are on. All the student body in the town would make a line and make a tunnel on the field. And I remember the football team, our hometown football team, come out in the end zone. The band's playing, everybody's standing up, and they run through this tunnel and they break this big giant paper banner. And I remember that is the first moment in my life where I saw this is something special. This is great.
Yeah.
And I can play that entire, it's probably a 30-second, 45-second clip. I can still see the players in the end zone jumping them down and breaking through that banner. And it was that moment I said, this is something great. It was the first time I've experienced something that's just different. Yeah. And I felt a calling in my heart at that moment. Like, I'm supposed to be here. Like, I'm supposed to see, like, there's something about the game of football that God hardwired in me that I'm supposed to do. And my birthday was like a few weeks later. I was 5 years old at the time. So my 6-year-old birthday party was coming up. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, she says, what do you want for birthday? I said, I want my best friends to come over and I want to run through a banner and I want to play football in the backyard. That's what I want. And so that's what she did. She got one of her friends. They made this big giant banner and she called out me and my friends and we ran through this and broke this banner. And then we played backyard football for my 6-year-old birthday party. And it was the best birthday party ever. And so it's kind of funny how, God hardwires us, I think, in our heart. And I feel like, he says he places eternity in our hearts, right? In Ecclesiastes, Solomon talks about that. And I feel like every one of us has this, this something, this eternity in his heart. And there's these beacons all around us, whether it's a situation, whether it's creation, but there's certain times where you come into contact. And for me, it was that situation on that Friday night football field where it's like, okay, I'm supposed to be a part of this somehow. And that was my first inclination of like, okay, where do I go from here? So I was trying to chase like this element of sport because I felt I was called to be a part of that. So baseball was my first experience.
Okay.
And so in the spring, I decided to play baseball. My dad wouldn't let me play football until I was going to get in middle school. He didn't want me to play football until I got older. And so I tried baseball and so I'm playing baseball and I was awful. I mean, I was horrible. And so I was looking for a secret. I was looking for something that could give me like magic. And so I was in the convenience store, getting ready to go to the baseball game. And there was these gumballs that were in the candy section. And on each gumball had a different thing written on it. So like one would say single, one would say double. One gumball would say home run, one would say grand slam. And so in my logical mind, I'm like, well, if I chew the home run piece of gum when I'm up at bat, it's going to give me a superpower and I'm going to hit a home run. And then I saw the grand slam one and I was like, well, that's better than the home run. So I took the grand slam and the home run gumball.
Ooh.
Right. And on the way to the baseball game, I'm excited because I'm like, I've got this secret power. I got this secret nobody else has. So I hide the gumballs in my sock because you didn't have, pockets in your baseball pants. And I go up to bat and the pitcher on the mound is just throwing heaters. And so I put the home run first and I'm chewing it and I'm up there and I mean, swing, strike, and say, okay, next one, I'm going to knock it out. And then what happens? I swing and I strike out. I'm like, man, okay, well, that didn't work. So next batter up, I'm going to do the grand slam one, right? Well, I didn't even think about there wasn't 3 guys on the base, but I'm thinking I still got the power. So I get up, do the grand slam, same things happen. And I was just like, okay, well, this didn't work. And I think the whole point of that story is we're always looking for something to give us that superpower, whether it's, Superman flying or what's that secret. And so baseball just wasn't it for me. And so when I went on to play the next year, in 5th grade, I went to play football for the first time. And so my dad didn't want me to play. So when you don't get something from your father, what do? You go work mom. And so I worked on mom for a while, cried. And so finally she allowed me to go up and play, tackle football in 5th grade. And I got my number 7 jersey and I was going to play quarterback. And because I was a John Elway fan. And I'll never forget being in that huddle and playing quarterback. And I was just like, this is what I was called to do. I just, that beacon was sounding off in my heart. And it was having that same feeling I had watching that high school football game when I was a 5-year-old. It was like, I was called to do this. And I had a great year and just loved the coach. And I remember scoring my first touchdown in 5th grade was on a quarterback sneak, and it was on a goose and go. Right. And so 3 weeks prior, the coach, told us about the goose and go. We just get on the center, silent count, as soon as the center feels your hands, right, snaps the ball, and we run the quarterback sneak. And it's 0-0. We break off a big run. We get tackled on the 1, and it's 4th quarter, time's to win on out. And I run to the side like, Coach, goose and go. And he just, like, the look on his face was like, that's a great idea. Like, he wasn't even thinking that. And so, like, even at a young age, I had this, my mind was wired like a coach.
Yeah.
It was like, God has given me gifts, and you learn this as you get older, but it was like you were hardwired to see these things and understand these things. And we ran the goose and go. I scored and we won the game, and it was the best feeling in the world. And I tell you, I was like, I finally called. I've been called, and I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I want to play quarterback. In 6th grade, went and played quarterback again. And right before the season, I'm hanging, Ken. I've got my John Elway life-size poster. And I'm hanging that over my bed, and I had to get a folding chair on top of my bed, and I'm trying to tack the top of the poster on my folding chair on the bed, and it obviously was unstable, and I fall, and I try to catch myself, and I break my arm. And my arm is like, it was bad. It was a compound fracture, and I'm going downstairs, and I'm screaming, crying, not because I'm in pain, but all I was saying to my mom was like, Mom, what about football? What about football? I can't play football now. And I was so devastated because I wasn't going to be able to play football that year. And go back to playing quarterback, and I couldn't throw. I was not a good thrower. And back then, you could either throw or you couldn't. There was no quarterback trainers, right? It was
Right.
so 7th grade, I start the first 2 games, and I just couldn't throw. And so the quarterback, or excuse me, the head other quarterback. And so we had a competition that day, and I got to run one series with the first huddle, and then the other guy got to work another series with the first huddle, and whoever graded out the best was going to be the new starter. Well, I got beat out. Okay. And so I was devastated. And so I got moved to receiver. And so I had a position change. And so rest of the season I played receiver. And then in 8th grade, I'm playing receiver. And the Sunday before one of our games, our preacher was preaching. And he was preaching on, and usually I didn't pay attention to the sermon. I'm a young kid, I'm drawing pictures, right? And try not to fall asleep. And the preacher's preaching on faith. And he says, in Matthew, I think it was 21, he's like, if you say to this mountain, go throw yourself in the sea, it will be done. If you believe, whatever you receive, or you receive whatever you ask for in prayer. And that got my attention. All of a sudden it was like, okay, this is the superpower. If God says you pray in faith and he'll give you whatever you want, I now had the magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
It was better than the gumballs.
Better than the gumballs.
And so I go back home, and this is before a game, and I prayed the most faith-filled prayer to God. God, please let me score a touchdown. and as a receiver, because I missed the feeling I got when I was at the quarterback and I scored that touchdown, the goose and go, and I wanted that again. I wanted to be great. Just like when I was a 5-year-old and I saw that field, I had this immense desire to be great. And so I prayed the most, like I said, faith-filled prayer, and I did not have a shadow of a doubt that I was going to score a touchdown that next game. There was nothing. I mean, God says, have faith of as small as a mustard seed. You can say that mountain, move and it will move. And I had the faith of a redwood. And so we're driving to the game in the bus. I still remember looking out the window, and it was the first time really that I felt a relationship with God, not as a God of condemnation or discipline, but a God of love, of a fatherly, relationship, of a Jesus as your friend, because that verse spoke to me. And so it was like me and God were on the bus together, and hey, we're going to go and he's going to answer this prayer. And so we go to the game, and the coach, I forget what quarter it was, but he coached, I write 126 Z fade. And I'm like, here it is, it's coming. And so I'm in my stance. I'm ready to roll. I fire off the ball, and the quarterback throws the fade route. And you're never going to believe what happened.
What?
I didn't catch it. It was overthrown. And I mean, truth be told, I was probably too slow, but I was so confused after that because I didn't understand. I believed. I didn't doubt one bit. And it was a confusing time for me. And, I didn't walk away from my faith. Life went on, and there was more ups and there was more downs going on. But that just really was a pivotal moment that I just really didn't understand. Is this Bible true? Right. I had no doubt, not one doubt that he was going to answer that prayer. And so life goes on, right? And probably 12 years ago, driving down the road, thinking about whatever. And it was if God just got my attention, and it was like, hey, you remember in 8th grade when you prayed for a touchdown? I said, yeah. I'm thinking, yeah. And all of a sudden I could see the connections, right? It's like a highlight reel going back to my head, and I'm going back through my life, and I'm seeing all the dots connect. And it's like, I didn't want to give you a touchdown that day, because as soon as you prayed that prayer, it unlocked a door to allow me to go to work and do something far greater than a touchdown in 8th grade.
Wow.
And I could see, since that time, over the last 30 years, since that happened, I've been part of 6 state championship teams, written 4 books on football, trained quarterbacks across the country. Everything in my life that's great is tied in some way to football. My wife is named Tanya. My name's Dub, TD. My kids' names, Tizer, Dub, Tayson, Dax, TD.
Yeah.
When I call a play on Friday night at Scores, it's like I scored the touchdown. Everything that I've done, it's like God has woven through, and it's like touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. There's so many touchdowns he's given me. And I truly believe it's because of that faith-filled prayer that I prayed as an 8th grader.
That didn't work out in that time.
That didn't work at that time, but he went to work and he laid out all of these things. Think about it. My number one fan was John Elway. And I'm on a podcast today talking to Ken Karcher, who played for the Broncos and backed up John Elway. It's like another guy's just kind of laughing. He's like, hey, you're going to do this podcast today. Do you realize the intricacies here and how I've set this all up? And so the prayer I prayed is what I love about God. When you pray a faith-filled prayer, is a lot of times it just doesn't get answered and done. It's not just finite. It continues on and on and on. And he finds just little ways to remind you of, hey, this continues on. And so I think that's the encouragement for anybody out here listening, is that never underestimate the power of a faith-filled prayer. And if it doesn't get answered, you just never know how he's working it out on the other end. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me, when what I learned just as I look back on my childhood is I didn't play in the NFL, didn't play in college, but there was something about this game that he had a plan for me from the beginning of my life, and he's continued to answer it. That prayer still today.
Wow. That's deep.
I think he answered your question there, Austin. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's parts, my mind works a lot like yours, Dub. Like, there were a lot of things that kind of, that happened internally with me throughout my playing career that, that God has really taken, and, maybe I felt like it didn't answer at that time, but over time, God has kind of showed me how, he was there the whole time. And, even at least what God's been showing me in my journey is like, his desire is for us to experience true life or eternal life, the things of eternity, or the kingdom is another way to say it. And what is that? Well, it's knowing him and experiencing him. And sometimes that is connected to things not working out the way I wanted in that moment. But like you said, it's like, that doesn't mean that he's not working good things through every circumstance. And just, I don't know. I really like how you're able to look back and make the connection, just and just even just your openness about talking about your conversation with Papa in the car. You're sitting there, and this is just a dialogue you're having that he put on your heart, that, hey, you remember that, and he took you back there. And that's loving in himself. He could have never went back to that moment, but to point you and connect you. I know I've experienced that many a times. But
let's jump to his coaching there, Austin.
Okay. So, Coach, tell us. Obviously, you've had a passion from a young age to be a coach. Tell us, how you went about actually getting into the profession. Maybe some of the stops along the way, and some of your experiences.
Yeah, for me, coaching, I'm a coach today because of my 5th grade football coach. The passion he had for the game, his name's Duke Eldridge, and it was my first experience at football, and he was so passionate about the game. But I can probably list 10 stories to this day. This is, again, almost 40 years ago. To this day, 10, of specific stories or lessons that he taught us as a team through football. And so he was a master at using the game to teach life lessons. I can remember him telling a story of, he had a bad day at work, and he cussed out one of his coworkers. And he's calling the team up, and he's sharing this story about a meltdown he had on a coworker. And he's telling a bunch of 10-year-olds this story about how he messed up today, and how he chewed out his coworker, and he was trying to relate it to, some of the players on the team, yelling at each other, whatnot. But he's like, he was so open and vulnerable. And I don't remember anything about the scheme that he taught, but I remember specific lessons he taught me and pulled out of me. And I feel like God placed him in my life for that reason. He was kind of the spark that made me want to become a coach. And it was just the passion that he had for the game. So that's really where it started for me. My dad was, like I said, was a coach. And I think my dad would have been one of the best coaches of all time in basketball if he would have done it, but he chose to become an administrator to make money and provide for the family and have some stability. He didn't want to travel around and have to move. And my dad has the great ability to watch any kind of game, basketball, football, and he can see patterns, and he can see, like, quickly, what is wrong, what is broken, what needs to be fixed. And so I was always enamored how he could see things in the game or watch it on TV and knowing, what should be done, what should be fixed. And so that was inspiring to me. I was placed under, when I first, what made you become a coach is I missed football so much when I graduated high school. I had to do something to get as close as I could to the game. I missed the camaraderie. I missed, just what was in my heart for the game, what I felt. And so I knew coaching would get me as close as I could back to the game of football. So that's, what stirred me to become a coach in high school. And I was fortunate enough to be around. It's funny how, God answers the prayer. I've worked under 4 head coaches in my career throughout the last 25 years. I'm starting my 25th year in coaching. The 4 head coaches I've worked for are all in the Hall of Fame in their respective states. and combined, they've won over 30 state championships.
Wow.
And so, but that's not coincidence. I mean, that's how I think, going back to that prayer I prayed, it's like, okay, I'm going to place you under these great men. And what's interesting about being under 4 Hall of Fame coaches is that everyone has their own style and under their own personality, but the non-negotiables, they're all men of faith and deep faith. And they use the game to teach, a relationship with God through it and how to serve. And so that was a non-negotiable. And so that helped mold my philosophy and see the impact it could have on kids. They all are hard workers. They're very organized. And so I was able to see, how a good model of how it's done. And you can win with your different personalities, but again, those non-negotiables are still the same. So that's some things I think that spurred me to want to go into coaching and help mold my philosophy and help me become who I am today.
Did you have any aspirations of coaching in college or even the NFL?
Yeah, I've had some opportunities. It's just for me, having a family, and my family's here, and having a young family, I didn't want to move, and I wanted to have some sort of stability, and I wanted the freedom to create and to innovate. And so it's a challenge to do that when you're stuck in a machine at the college or NFL level. And so being in high school has allowed me to be really creative and experiment and to, try different things. And in high school, you don't recruit and you don't, draft guys. And so you have a lot of experience with learning how to adapt to different personnel, different talent levels. And so I think that's why God, put me in this kind of this container in this path that I'm on. I wouldn't be able to create the systems and the things I've done if I was, stuck recruiting or stuck in a, more of a inside the box style of thinking.
I like the 2 words you used, Dub, create and innovate. And with those said, let's and I'm going to trust you with the best way to go about this for our listeners. But if I have my order correct, I think the first thing that you developed was the book From Headset to Helmet, along with the R4 system. Am I correct?
Yes.
So describe to us this creative, innovative mindset that caused you to want to do that, and tell us a little bit about the book and what the R4 system does.
Well, it started out through failures. So my first year coaching quarterbacks, we had a really great quarterback. I was at Jinx High School, and he was amazing and was really good at reading and just had this innate ability cognitively absorb a lot of information. We get in the playoffs, second round, we're on the road, and we're working a simple curl flat concept. And so how do you teach it? Well, you read the flat defender. And if he drops to the curl, throw the flat, drops to the flat, you throw the curl. Real simple back then. Mirrored both sides. I mean, static cover 3 is all you're seeing back then. And the linebacker didn't move. He just stood there. Didn't move. And my quarterback throws it right to him for a pick 6. And this quarterback I was coaching at the time is one of the most cool under pressure, just surgeons on the field. And he comes to the sideline and his eyes were big as saucers. And he's screaming, he's panicked, total tailspin. He goes, "Coach, I have no idea what I'm seeing out there." And so our head coach comes to me and he's like, "You better figure what's going on out." He's like, "Or you're going to get fired." I mean, he didn't say that, but I mean, that was what I felt at that moment. And luckily we were able to run the ball and pull that game out. But I never wanted to be in a situation again where I didn't have the tools to pull my quarterback out of a tailspin. And so I was like, I've got to figure out a better way to teach reads and recognition and cognition. And so I went and I did deep dive studies on, military strategies. How do they teach decision-making under pressure? Because that's the name of the game. I mean, what are coaches looking for with elite quarterbacks? It's accuracy, right? Anticipation under pressure. Basically, how do you perform under pressure is non-negotiable. And so there's no system out there to train that. I mean, what are your methods to teach how to make good decisions under pressure? How to where do you look with your eyes? How do you increase spatial awareness and timing? And so that's where it started. And so the first book was just basically a reads and recognition system, how to tie your footwork into routes, but also how to read patterns and see space outside of just, well, okay, I know it's cover 3, but just because it's cover 3 doesn't mean they're going to react like they should.
Right.
right? Especially in high school. I mean, and then the way defenses now are today, you have no idea what you're seeing pre-snap is not what you're going to see in post-snap. I mean, defensive coordinators got super creative on disguising coverage and changing, coverage rules based on routes. And so you have to have something outside of the old method of defender keying things. And so so all the research was done outside of the realm of football, because the answers for that weren't in football. So you had to go into other domains like special forces and maybe soccer, or maybe, what are some other domains out there where they have cracked these codes on how to recognize patterns, how to increase your visual acuity. And so that's really what started the rabbit hole of the process of R4. And so it was a reads and recognition system developed to allow quarterbacks to read full field or to make better decisions under pressure. So that's the first book and where the system started. Then a few years later, I become a coordinator. And so my first experience calling plays was fairly easy. I mean, we had a very senior laden team. We were scoring 50 a game. And I'm thinking, man, this is really easy. You just have your plays on your sheet, you call a play, you get 20 yards, right? I mean, I don't know why people are freaking out. I mean, this play calling thing's simple. And we get to the state championship game and we're up 28-7.5. And I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. First year as a coordinator, breaking the all-time scoring record, undefeated, state championship. And then we go out and, fumble here, defensive, breakdown here. And next thing you know, we're down 3 with about a minute and 20 seconds left. And we got to drive probably 60 yards to get in the field goal range to tie, or we got to go 80 to score. And on the sideline, I'm sitting there and, 11 guys are looking at me in the huddle. And I'm like, okay, call the coaches up in the box. Hey, what do you guys like here? And it's just crickets. And look over the offensive line coach. What do you like? And he's like, hey, this is your job, man. If you want a goal line play, I got it. But, this is what you're paid to do. And I looked at my play call sheet and it felt a million miles away from me. And I was in that situation as a play caller that my quarterback was, 5 years earlier on that curl flat concept. I was in a tailspin and the pressure got me, and I couldn't process a series of plays. I had one magic bullet left, and we called it, and we don't get any yards. And so I'll never forget the devastation that I had after that game, because I felt like I lost the game for our team. I didn't do a good job. And so I didn't sleep at night, watch the sun come up, call my mom early in the morning, had a conversation with her, but I'd never want to be in that situation again. So I thought, well, if we've created a system to help quarterbacks make better decisions under pressure and how to read patterns and have a process, a layered teaching approach to passing concepts, there's got to be a way to help offensive coordinators do the same thing, right? Using these same principles. Because as an offensive coordinator, I'm having to make decisions every play, no matter run or pass, where the quarterback really only has to think on pass plays. And so we took that same framework that we did for the quarterbacks and built a game planning and play calling process that's R4 based through that. And that's really what's helped a ton of coaches across the country is just, I do a podcast and I interview a lot of coaches in the college NFL level. And I always ask them, what's your game planning process? What are you thinking as you call them plays? And I mean, I think a lot of guys don't have the ability to verbalize or have a layered process of how they do it. And I think, some guys are really good and they have this innate ability, but how do you teach that to other people? My deal was I need all my coaches on my staff and all my players to see through the same lens that I'm seeing. And you can't do that without a common language in a sequential process. And so that's what we spent years developing, where I need help. I can't see everything, but your frame of reference, Ken, what you're seeing on the field may be different from mine unless we're using the same frames of reference for space and time. And we have to be talking the same language.
Yeah.
And so that's really what R4 is. It's common frames of reference. It's a common language, and it's a structured system that links plays together. So again, that's what we've built through that. And it's really, people ask, where'd you come up with this? Like, it's God. I mean, it's God's spirit. It's God's wisdom. It's the gift he's given me to be able to put this together. It's not me. And so that's the cool thing about it is he's answered that prayer. I wanted to be great in 8th grade and score a touchdown, but he had something so much bigger to not only help me score touchdowns on a Friday, but help other coaches. And And really what it does is it opens up an opportunity to, share it like you're doing here, or to impact kids in that way. Hey, this is R4. It's great. It's helped me. But hey, by the way, where'd it come from?
Yeah.
You really want to know? I mean, you really want to know? I mean, there's this, so.
Awesome.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to do this podcast with my son, Austin. For the last 10 years, Austin and I have had many intimate conversations on his drive home from work. Some of these father-son conversations have been lighthearted, while others have been very deep and emotional. Over the Christmas holidays, we decided to start a podcast called Awaken Kingdom Culture, where we invite our friends to share their life-changing stories with you, our listeners. This podcast is done under our nonprofit, The Win Awakening, a sports ministry network for coaches, athletes, and those who lead. Our vision is to awaken hearts and minds, one story at a time. Our mission is to encourage coaches and athletes and those who lead to live from a place of victory, regardless of success, records, or the scoreboard. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. Right in the middle of your mess, I'm reminded daily that the most important person of my day is the one in front of me, and that one matters, and that you are the one. WinAwakening.org is our website. I encourage you to visit our website, where you can encounter the good news of who you are in Christ and what you already possess and how to live from it. There you'll find blogs, videos, Andrew's journal, and this podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. I'm thankful for all of you who have given and are a member of Team Win. Awaken Kingdom Culture is listener supported. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to winawakening.org. We are a nonprofit. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And please like, share, and write a review on Spotify or YouTube. Okay, it's time to get back to the podcast. Well, what's interesting, and this is really, I couldn't wait to get into this. I was telling Austin prior to us talking, because, there's so many things you just said that I think are, and like you said, it's come from God, but there's so many of these statements you're making within football terminology that I believe are integrated into our faith. Like you said, how do you perform under pressure? Well, how do we as followers of Christ perform under pressure? What allows us to be able to do that in a performance-based industry? You talked about, cognitive thinking. And we talk a lot in this podcast and in our ministry about there's a difference between thinking transformationally versus thinking transactionally. So this whole thought process of thinking, you talked about visual cues. And we talk a lot about how does a coach see a player or another staff member? We see differently. Are you able to see through a performance, good or bad, because both will happen, and recognize growth, which life is about growth, right?
Absolutely.
You talk about, I heard I think it was on, you talk about language before I moved to the other one. You talk about, the common language. Well, I know, and I can speak personally from it. If a coach doesn't understand that words matter, you speak life or you steal life every day as a coach. So there's a language that's important there. You talked about, in one of these podcasts I heard you before, you talked about anchoring. Mm-hmm. Share a little bit about your thoughts on anchoring. And I think there's such a tie to anchoring in our faith the same way. So all these terms that you're throwing around, I agree with you, Dub. You have been touched that God's put something in you that looks like it's football related only, but boy, it's so much deeper.
Oh, he sees the connections. You're able to see the beauty of the sport, and you're able to make those connections to. And like you said, you saw your player, you saw your senior quarter or your quarterback that first year in a tailspin. And what do you want to do? You wanted to help him. You wanted to work with him. I mean, that's what coaches are called to do, is to step in and try to organize thoughts and classify things to help people be able to see better or think clearer or all those things.
Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on anchoring. I thought it was very fascinating, and I know it'll generate some thoughts with Austin because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. So anchoring is a visual strategy that they've discovered in other sports. And so what they found is like the elite athletes in any sport, whether it be baseball, golf, soccer, they put trackers on their eyes, and they can see what they do is they're able to center their central focus between, key threats like defenders. Okay? So like, for example, take a general, like just spacing concept, like a spot sit flat. There's a lot of times we teach defender key and we just laser focus on one guy. Well, when you central focus on one defender, you lose your benefit of using your peripheral. And so what you need to understand, there's power in your peripheral vision, and your peripheral vision has limits though. So like the visual acuity of your peripheral vision is strongest within 13 degrees. So like if you like held up your fingers, like, and made what I call like the U symbol. I'm at Union. So the U symbol's like this, right? Okay. So my index fingers are pointed up and my thumbs are almost touching. Well, that is 13 degrees visual acuity, right? So anything that I can fit visually, okay, within this frame I made with my fingers, right? That's where my peripheral vision is the strongest. So what I want to do is I want to centrally focus, right, my vision, right, between two routes, between the routes that I'm trying to create a stretch on. And what happens is I can process multiple defenders as long as they're in that 13-degree frame. And a lot of times when you teach defender key, and I'm not saying there's certain things you may want to defender key, but when you can teach your quarterback how to pull in and anchor his eyes in a specific space that he's trying to attack and pull in more than one defender key, he can see way more than he ever thought he could. And so I think that's what anchoring is. It's knowing where to anchor your central focus so you can pull in your periphery. So it's like if you're at a stoplight and you're looking straight ahead, like practice, like as cars go across, like say you're at a stoplight and cars are going across, practice how fast you can cloud the color of the cars coming in different directions. And you'll see as soon as they get in that 13-degree visual acuity, all right, that's red, that's blue. You may even identify that's a truck, that's a semi, that's a car. Before it's in your center, you're not even looking at it, but you can process and cognitively pick up things way faster when you learn how the power of anchoring. And so I think that's a quick general background on the anchoring concept that can help quarterbacks.
That's really smart.
You ever seen the whack-a-mole game? Like you go to like Chuck E. Cheese with your kid, right? What's the secret to that? Well, if I centrally focus, like I see the mole come up on the game, well, my eyes are focused on that and I'm late. And he's over here. And if I'm chasing those moles, they come up, I'm not going to hit it in time. But if I centrally focus my vision right in the middle of that board, and I feel like when I see movement out of my periphery, that's how you beat the game and score the most points. And so that's a simple general way to understand how the anchoring concept can benefit you to see things faster and movements faster and process movements faster.
See, when I hear you talking, I think of, again, the spiritual picture of anchoring, which is what is our central focus, right? It's Christ. It's in Christ. It's the truth of who we really are. It's identity. And with that being my central focus, I have the ability to see peripheral, all these things that are occurring around me. And really, it's people. It's not things. It's the ability to recognize the importance of the people that are around me. That whole anchoring, that's very intriguing to me when you talk about that.
So think about this, Ken. So this happened, the other day. So when there's certain days I'm better than I'm not in terms of like, getting up, praying, really talking to God and really being dialed in centrally focused on Christ, right?
Mm.
But those days I'm centrally focused and anchored on him, my ability to like be on the field with the players or walk through and pick up like things that kids are going through, or pick up, hey, you need to talk to him. Hey, he's struggling with something. Hey, why don't you go give this guy this word? Right? That doesn't happen unless I'm anchored on Christ. If I'm just focused and just chasing what's happening in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
My phone, right? I'm centrally focused on my phone, or, okay, we got to do this next. I am not able to peripherally, because your peripheral vision is hyper sensitive. So it picks up things very quickly. And I am not my best on those days where I'm not anchored. But when I'm anchored, it's almost like you have a superpower.
Yeah.
In terms of
Dub, I'm sure you remember the conversation we had. I think it was 2 times ago. Every day that you're out talking about the R4 system and all the different pieces of it, you're sharing the gospel. You're sharing truth, just what you just said. Anchoring conversation with quarterback coaches, coordinators around America is you're delivering truth that is really an anchor for their life. And that's just so intriguing to me that when I've heard the different things and even looked into some of your books, there's so much truth that's in it. And I think this whole concept of anchoring is really the rock that you're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's jump to family a little bit here and tell us, you mentioned the names, but tell us about your family, your wife, your children, anything you'd like us to know about them.
Well, my wife is a diehard Texas Tech Red Raider fan. She's from Lubbock, Texas, and she graduated from there. So everything in our house is guns up. It's Red Raiders. My 2 kids have been brainwashed to pull for the Red Raiders, which kills my dad because he's an Oklahoma Sooner fan. And so that's a constant struggle in our house. But she's brilliant. She is working on her doctorate right now in psychology, and she has a certificate in sports psychology. So she is working on her dissertation right now. And when she gets that, we are going to try to use that to develop a strategy and a system to help players cope with performance under pressure. And so we're going to be able to develop some strategies and some things. Cause I'm telling you, I don't know, I'm seeing this more and more with social media and things. Athletes are so fragile because their mistakes are blasted out everywhere. And so they struggle with failure, and a lot of times they don't know how to pull themselves out. And a lot of times they're mentally, emotionally much more fragile than they were, 10, 15 years ago. So anyway, that's what kind of spurred her to work on this doctorate. She's worked on a couple of years. So that's what she's working on now. And we're excited to get through that and try to develop some things to help athletes. And then I have a 5-year-old and a soon to be 3-year-old, Tyser and Tayson. And we're blessed to have 2 healthy kids. And we're just in the middle of it right now, having 2 kids under 5, 5 and under. It's all hands on deck. Right. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Austin can relate.
I'm sure they love coming to the games, I'm sure.
Yes. My oldest runs out on the field. They have a flag team that after we score, he runs out and he'll carry a Union flag and run out in the field with them. And they have a spirit squad, and they do push-ups after a touchdown, however many points on the board. And they got him on the board one game, and he's trying to do push-ups. And he loves it. And he's consumed with just the Friday night lights and all that. So it's been kind of fun to see that grow in him.
Hey, Dub, how does your wife make you a better coach?
Whew, man, too many ways. She was in the corporate world for many years and was a C-level, basically analyst. She was at like what they call it, forecaster, right? She understands numbers. And so she would basically take all the data from the sales, and she could make predictions. It's kind of funny. She would do what I would do for football. She could make anticipated decisions on the direction the companies to go and sales and how many units they need to make and this and that. And was really high up and just killing the corporate world and for years. And then COVID hit, obviously shut down. And then we had our kids, and she's like, I think I need to go a different direction, be called a different direction. So that's when we started working on our doctorate, and that's where we are today. So how does she make me a better coach? She is brilliant at diagnosing and breaking down like kids' relationships. I'm really into strategic and X's and O's. She helps keep me focused on relationships and how to, break down barriers and impact kids from a relationship level. And she's constantly, hey, we need to have the guys over tonight. This kid's struggling with this. You need to really think about this. Hey, did you talk to Jimmy today? She's always kind of on me about, staying focused more on the relationship side, where a lot of times I can get caught in the weeds of just how to get a first down. So that's one of the main ways she helps me. Is she's a brilliant behind the scenes, she would be as good a coach as I am if she wanted to be. So she's like a general, and she's real good at strategic thinking, and she was in ministry for many years. And so she had a lot of impact on a lot of kids in that way. But now she's helping me do it on the football field.
I don't know if you remember the first time we met down at that clinic, and you rattled off a few things you're doing, and I was like, wow, in the world do you find time to do all that? So my question is for you, Dub, is this: how have you found Papa speaking to you? What is what's the way he speaks to you the most, and how do you find time to rest your mind?
The way he speaks to me the most is, I'll get it different ways. For me, I hear from him most as I journal. And I don't know, nobody ever, I think I read a book one time, and this was one of the themes in the book, but probably 10 years ago, I started journaling and writing my journal, and I would write my prayers, my request, or, I'd read the Bible and write some notes, but then I would just pray, and I would just get quiet, and I would just free write what I felt he was telling me. And I wouldn't think about the next word. I wouldn't try to interject in my logical mind what I wanted to write down. And I would just free write of what I feel Papa's telling me. And I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 notebooks laying around, from the last 10, 15 years. And it blows my mind of how many times I go back and read what he told me, and how how he made me avoid a certain bad situation, or how he told me this was going to happen, or how he's, fathering me or encouraging me, telling me things that are going to happen that I, said there's no way this is going to happen, and it ends up happening. And so I think that is something I hope everybody has some way to get that, because that took my spiritual relationship with him to another level. And that's kind of how he speaks to me best. Now, sometimes I'll watch a movie and he'll speak to me through that, or maybe it's a song, or praise and worship song will come on, or, but that's probably the biggest way that I get communication, is through prayer and just journaling and allowing him to speak to me just through free writing.
Do you let anyone ever read those writings?
No, I don't.
Just between you and him?
Yeah, it's kind of, if they did, I'm fine with it. It's nothing, but it's something. It's just me and him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do a lot of that too. Is like, and on other podcasts I've said that I'll be laying in bed and I'll pull out my phone, go to my notes tab, and just like what you just described was kind of what I do. Is like, I don't really think about the next word or what's coming next. It's literally just sit and listen and just write what's there. And then sometimes I'll look back like weeks later at what was written. I'm like, I don't even really know if I really understood what I was writing at that moment, and the impact of it. And then all of a sudden you read it and you're like, there's wisdom there, but I don't think it was me. I think it came from him, because I don't completely understand what I just wrote. So yeah, so I get that.
Well, let's go to our final segment here, which we talk legacy, Dub. And the question I would like to just ask as we start that is what would you like your legacy to be in the game of football, or offensive play, or QB play?
I don't know if I think much about that, honestly. I've won 6 state championships, been a part. And it's amazing to me. The head coach that I worked for, Jinx, was Alan Trimble, and Hall of Fame coach, and a lot of people know him. And just unbelievable man of God. He got diagnosed with ALS in 2015 and then succumbed to it in 2019. And so seeing how he had won 13 state championships and all the things that he accomplished in a career, and just seeing when he got diagnosed and how he changed, it didn't matter. None of that mattered. Like none of the championships, like the legacy he left, it wasn't about the championships. Like he could care less about those. And just the impact that he had on a community and kids, like that's what I wanted to try to leave. It's not about the rings. It's about the relationships. Right. And to me, that's a constant battle to me, because my brain and mind is so hardwired for wins and moving the ball down the field. And so that's really the legacy I want to leave, is what was left of me by my coaches, is just the impact and what did you teach me about my purpose in my life through the game. And that's the main one. When you're dead and gone, I don't care about books and rings and all that. It's about eternal things, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What has been the most significant moment in your coaching career, do you think? I mean, obviously winning 6 titles, that's awesome. Is there a specific moment there? And then the most significant moment in your spiritual journey?
So significant moment in coaching?
Yeah.
To me, those significant moments are the hard losses or the failures. And that's what I'm learning more now than everything. It's we got beat and upset in the semifinals last year, and there's some things I could have done better in that game, and it's learning through failure, I think. And there's some unbelievable things that we're able to innovate through those failures. And I think that's the significant things to me now. It's like, it's because when you win a state championship, you wake up the next day, it's like, oh no, now I got to do it again. And, and now the pressure's even greater. Right. And so I think for me, the significant things for me in my career are all the mistakes and the failures and the hard losses, because when you look at it through the lens of, you're going to be able to learn and create something really cool from this. That's the moments that mean the most to me. Spiritually, for me, it's just, I think, learning how to have a relationship with God that's real. And, when I was younger, I was raised in an unbelievable church, but I never understood about how to have a true walk with the Father in terms of just how he's alive, acting and working, how he can speak to you, like how he can, how he's working, and he can, and so, through, reading and coming across people of faith, outside my hometown as I got older, and just seeing how, God spoke through them and how they do it. I think that's probably the biggest victory in my spiritual walk, is just learning how to have a alive and active relationship with him, where he is moving, working, and you're seeing miracles happen, and you're seeing him take care of you and provide for you. I think that's the biggest win for me.
Yeah.
Dub, when someone encounters Dub Maddox, what do you want them to experience, and how do you want to be remembered?
I want them to be inspired to find what they're great at, and to seek that out with all their heart. I'm big on just finding your purpose, and my hope is that they see me and see the excitement I have for football and the love I have for the game, not for just the game itself, but for all the things you can learn from it, and the passion I have for it, and take that. And it doesn't have to be in football, but take that and find what God has called you to do in your domain, and go do that. I think that's what I want. If someone sees me and say, oh, you've created this and you're real passionate about this, and man, you get fired up on the sideline, like, take that passion I have for finding my purpose and what God's called me to do, and go kill it in your area that he has for you. And I just feel so sorry for people that never get to discover that, or never understand how to find that. And if that can inspire someone to try to say, you know what, God has really done things in his life, and look at all he's done and blessed him with. Well, awesome. That's him, but he can do that for you. I mean, he has a perfect plan for us. We all can do great things in our own domain, in our own area, our own community. we just have to you have to pray that prayer of faith. You have to sit down and pray that prayer that I prayed in 8th grade, and you have to believe and not doubt. And it may not happen overnight, but if you can just stay consistent and get up and keep moving forward, he is going to go to work, because that's who he is. The Bible says the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And I just feel like there's so few people out there that just aren't willing to go out and pray that prayer of faith and go to work.
Yeah.
And be consistent. And because the harvest is plentiful, right? He's there knocking at the door. The Bible says he's knocked at the door, waiting for you to open it. And you just got to open the door and let him in, and he will change your life. I mean, he will. I don't see how people do it without it. I don't see how people make it. I couldn't imagine not having him. I couldn't imagine.
Well, the last thing we do is final words, Dub. And we'll give you a chance that if there's something maybe we haven't asked, or just something that's on your heart you'd like to share with our listeners, give you a chance for some final words, and then Austin will say something and I'll close us.
Yeah, final words. I mean, I know, like, to me, is I have kids, and I had kids when I was older. I didn't have them when I was young. So I have a unique perspective now to realize just how precious time is and how fast it moves. And so I'm able to maybe be more cognizant of making moments with my family, because I know how just quickly it all, goes away. And so I think, for people out there, just understand how short, God says, life is but a mist, or in James, life is but a mist. It truly is a mist. And, find ways daily to make moments and to be honed in to Christ. And I'm looking forward to eternity. I'm looking forward to, a day when we're all together and it never ends. And, I mean, that's it. I guess that's my final words.
Coach, for me, I just, your passion is contagious, like you said a number of times. I mean, it really is contagious. You have a gift of connection, and the ability to see. But on top of that, something that God kind of put on my heart as I'm just sitting here listening and processing is, you're a teacher of that. Like, everything that you're talking about, it's one thing to make a connection for yourself, but then your ability to help quarterbacks see, something that maybe they've never seen before, and then be able to execute in a way that they've never been able to see before. That's a gift to be able to pass it on to other people. And when you were talking about hearing God it's hard to kind of teach that to people. It's like, how do you hear God? And I think just listen to you as a football coach of how to see and how to think and how to hear. These are all things and questions that us as Christians are called to ask, seek, and knock. Just like you ask, seek, and knock to learn some of those things, and then be able to experience it in your life, and then pass it on to those around you that you care about and you love. And for me, God just reminded me that, we're called to search for that, and to look at, how to be able to understand, how to see him, how to hear him in all moments, in all parts of our day. And then how do we make that known to other people? Because that's that to be able to help, like you just said, be able to sit in a car and hear him talk, or if we're able to help others in that way, that's life changing. Just like it's able to help someone read a curl flat, it's game changing. So I know for me, I respect you as a football coach, a guy who loves quarterback play and all that. I respect you greatly. I've read your stuff. It's very detailed, which I'm all about. But just your ability and your heart for God. I hope the listeners see even more than just your football. They see God in you, because it's flowing out.
Man, I appreciate that.
There's boy, a lot of things I could say, but I don't want to take too long. But I'm grateful, first of all. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And again, I'm continuing, I continue to be amazed of how Papa crosses paths. And I think of I think it was maybe 15 minutes we sat together at a table. And now I consider you a dear friend, and I'm grateful that he allowed you to cross my path. And then I'm also grateful, and I think the game of football should be grateful for that little young man that didn't catch the pass, but asked the question about his faith, in the one that has affected the rest of your life from that one moment. And I believe is affecting football, the game of football, in more ways than we'll even know. And so, your story is incredible. And I continue to be amazed at how everyone's story is just so special. And like you talked about, Dub, we're all linked together in some way. You talked about everyone finding their passion and being able to see each other's passion and appreciate it, and to say, you know what, this is the work, Papa talks about in Ephesians, right? We are his workmanship. And to be able to appreciate each other's work that he has done in our lives and is doing in our lives. And so when I think of you, I think of the word grateful, selfishly grateful that you've crossed my path, and grateful for the touch that you're going to have throughout who knows how much longer you live, is the game of football. So thanks for the time you shared with us. Austin, I want to say thank you, and just sharing your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.